Hitting record. All right, so nobody say something you don't want recorded. Hi there, I'm Chris Holland. I have with me John Gann for today's IFP Festival Forum webinar. Hello, John.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Excellent.
We are going to give the full version of your little short 7-minute talk about uh, data mining and data mapping. Sorry, is there a difference between data mapping and data mining?
Well, we're going to be doing both. We're going to be mining some of the data and then mapping it. Yes.
Terrific. I'm looking forward to the mapping. I have to say, I used to work for the U.S. Geological Survey back in the day, and the things they could do with maps was always super cool. So it's nice to be able to see, what we as regular people can do with map data as well. Um, just for those folks who are joining us, there is a chat room per se. Unfortunately, right now there's a bug that won't let you see what other people are typing in, but the moderators can see it. So if you have questions, please type in there so that we can address those questions. We may also be able to unmute you so that you can participate, and ask your question, quote unquote, in person. So be ready for that. And I think that's about all you need to know. We do have Twitter handles and whatnot. Come on over to those. Please use the either Twitter handle or Twitter hashtag to ask questions now or later, or live tweet your favorite bits. John, what's your favorite handle on the Twitter or there?
What do you mean, my favorite handle?
Well, I know you tweet from multiple sources. If people want to get in touch with you
Yeah,
later,
who's at John Gann, Jongann.
okay, terrific.
Yes.
And I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Kristen, do you have anything to add before we get started here?
No, just hi everyone. And if you haven't already, please follow us on Facebook and Twitter, which are listed right there. They're pretty easy to find, but we'd love to have you join us.
Terrific. Okay. Without further ado, I'm going to get out your way. Kristen, don't forget to mute yourself. And John, take it away.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. So I'm going to be talking about a few things about data mining and data mapping. I'm a self-professed data geek. I come from a marketing background. That's before I got into film. I owned a marketing, graphic design, and advertising firm. I had that for about 20 years. And during that time, I was very much about data-driven marketing. Obviously, you have a hunch of where you want to market a product or a service, but the truth is the data behind who your actual audience is, where they are, where they're living, where they're going, where they're spending money, is much more valid than just saying, I think people are coming here because of this. I think that I'm not an automaton, but I do believe that data is sort of really important. And I think that a lot of festivals that I consult with, a lot of nonprofit groups I work with, don't even think that they have data when you probably have plenty that you don't even realize you have, and don't use any of that to actually figure out who their audience is, where they're coming from, maybe why they're attending your event, and then how to use that information to better market, find sponsors, etc. So that's kind of what we're going to go over today. I'm going to be doing a lot of screenshots, actual surfing of the web. And I'll go as slow as I can. If there's a problem, a technical issue, and you're not able to see something, text Chris. If you have questions, text Chris. The more, the merrier. Maybe towards the end, we could just open it up for a full, ask John whatever you want. I'm happy to answer any questions you've got. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk, and make it to share my screen. Okay, great. So the first thing I want to talk about is ticketing software. And I know everyone has a different ticketing software you like and you use. For the past 2 years, we've been using ticketleap.com. I find it really easy to set up. They pay out really fast, which is important to me. But more importantly, they have really great the ability to contact people and sort of survey people in purchase, on site at the box office, and sort of post event. I'm able to use their software to send out emails. After you buy a ticket online, I can send a message automatically saying thank you for buying it. This, by the way, tweet that you just bought this. Blah 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 blah. We find that very effective. But one of the things I like is on their checkout form, I'm actually able to create survey questions that I can ask people, and we have a box that we use all the time called Office Use Only. It's a little box at the very bottom of the page. And we use that to have our box office people, when they sell a ticket in person, to code sort of demographic information about someone. M or F for male or female, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, depending on the age range someone appears to be. Sometimes for some events, we might do ethnicity, WBA, whatever. Because we can then use that data. When we export this information into our donor software, or we're trying to massage to find to do a report on who showed up, we can sort of say, okay, so even though we have a survey we might be sending after the event, and people identify themselves as 60% women, 40% men, we can find out from actual people who came up to the box office that maybe those numbers were reversed, and that those who filled out the survey were just more likely to be women. Does that make sense? So I can actually show, here's an event we have coming up, and if let me see, buy tickets, add to cart, checkout. And so at the bottom of the page, after someone fills out their stuff, there's this box here that says Office Use Only. People don't ever fill this out, but we do at the box office. So I can type in something like M40, and so I know it was a male that was in their 40s that bought these tickets. It just gives us some data that we can then use later on. And sort of compare those statistics to the ones we actually get from the post-event survey. We can also use their software. Go back to actually, I can email people through the software of everyone who just attended a certain screening, a certain event, and send them the link to whatever our survey is. So again, everyone has different ticketing software that they like. This is the one I happen to like. And one of the reasons, again, that I like it is I can really spit out really quick reports, which is what we use to do a lot of the mapping we're going to be showing on later on. I can see everyone who came to the animation showcase on this date. I can search, and then I can download it as a CSV file, so I can get that information out of there. That file will have, if I open it up, that was a free event, so therefore it doesn't have that information. I take that back. Sorry about that. Let me try this again. Something that someone paid for, so I have some address information. There we go. There we go. Download. So in this spreadsheet, I can actually get someone's, let me delete all this stuff here because it's not important. I actually get their address, state, and zip code. This is the information I can then bring into Google Maps, which I'm going to show you in a little bit, to map out where everyone lives, or most ticket buyers live, or at least their billing address, that I can then use that information. And I'm going to show that in a little bit. But if your ticketing software does not allow you to export out data, then you really need to start looking at ticketing software that does. Because this is the information that will help you figure out where your audience lives, where they're coming from, and I'm going to show you how to use transit maps, et cetera, to sort of figure out best neighborhoods to target people. So there's, I really consider.
John,
Yes.
before we move on, there's a quick question.
Yeah.
So you were saying that you're comparing in-person data versus online respondents.
Mm-hmm.
How often do you find those trends in conflict with one another?
Most of the time.
Okay.
Most
So
of the
the
time.
people who are responding online are just a generally self-selecting different group of people.
Yeah, it's not that that's bad data. I mean, it's perfectly good data. It's just I find that when we kind of eye people up and survey them in person, we find slightly different demographics. So along with that, before I get to all the mapping and stuff like that, I'm going to talk about surveys a little bit. We do a bunch of surveys during the festival or during our events. In addition to a post-event survey, which we ask lots of questions about, your impressions, and this survey has like 30 questions about it, and what sponsors do you go to, how do you get there, blah 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 blah. What's your gender? What's your age? What's your zip code? We also have an in-person survey. We use a Google Doc for this, and this way we can have volunteers just bring this up on their smartphone, and all we ask. And some of these questions, the surveyor just finds this information on their own. So they look at someone, they go, oh, this person's a female. This person looks like they were in their 30s. Even if it's wrong, it gives you a better idea than just asking someone how old they are, which they're not going to tell you. We do ask for their zip code, so we get the zip code. And then we ask like 3 or 4 questions. Was this your first event? How do you rate the films 1 to 5? How do you rate the experience 1 to 5? And that's it. Survey takes 30, 40 seconds. Sometimes we ask for an email address if they want to give it to us. Otherwise, we don't really care. Submit. And then we get that information that we can then use to sort of figure out in person what those results are based and compare them to the responses of those who are filling out the post-event survey versus those who are filling out or we're eyeing when they're buying tickets. So it's 3 different ways to survey your audience. I find this way really easy. It's also a great way to get volunteers to talk to the audience. We have some shy volunteers. We love to get them to make more of an effort to meet people. And this is a great ground icebreaker to do that. And then we clear this out after each event so that we can continue to use it over and over again. So real simple, can be used on any smartphone. Some of these questions you just get the data from looking at somebody. Okay. Leave this page. We are big on, we use Google surveys or Google Forms for most of our surveys because we're able to have much longer questions than if we were to use the free version of SurveyMonkey or some of the others. There's lots of surveying software out there. It's really what you're used to and what you find is helpful for you. Again, for me, it's all about this data export, the fact that I can export this file as I can download as an Excel file or a CSV file, which is what I'm going to need for the mapping software. That helps a lot. That way I can open this up in Excel and I can delete fields I don't need, and I can use just the stuff I do need. Like I'm going to show you one later on we're going to create using gender and age and zip code. Okay. But surveying and tickets, 2 ways to get some great data about your audience. One is automatic, the ticketing one. Is when someone buys a ticket online with their credit card, they have to put their address in anyway. You're getting that information. In person, we might ask someone for their zip code just to help us if they're paying for cash, just so we can have that information. Okay. So then what do we do with all this data besides, make pretty reports and go, ooh, what nice data? I use it to help figure out lots of trends because ultimately that's what your data will give you. It won't give you answers, but will give you trends as to how things have been evolving and changing over the years. So one of the big maps we use, and we use Google Maps for all this, is called the Area Film Festival Audiences. And this is a sample of audiences from, I have in here, 2011, 2012, and 2013. And I can unclick. So here's my 2011 audience, and this is based on address information I've gotten from the ticketing software. And then if I add back in my layer for 2012, I can see from the dark orange that there are some neighborhoods, especially over here, and some to the west, that we didn't have audiences before in 2011 that we had in 2012. Some of this I contribute to new locations. In 2012, we had more venues in this area than we had before. This neighborhood up here where there's more orange than there was before is an up-and-coming transitional neighborhood full of young people. If I click on these data points, I get the information of to what the address is, so I can have a better idea. I can zoom in and really see where people are living, literally see where people are living, which helps me figure out lots of stuff. I'm going to show you some transit maps in a little bit. But this, to me, is really helpful, that I can see how my audience has grown and expanded and moved throughout the city over the course of, here's 3 years. I haven't put the 2014 data in yet. But I would assume that my 2014 data will have a lot more in this area over here, because this neighborhood has really changed quite a lot. And there's been a lot of housing development in that area that I know young people have been moving into. How do I use this data? Well, this lets me figure out if here is my, 2013. I can see I have a heavy concentration in this neighborhood called Columbia Heights. I can now say maybe next year I will put more catalogs in Columbia Heights at their health clubs and coffee shops than I would maybe Pleasant Plains, which doesn't have as much of a pull for me anymore. When I see that changes from 2012 to 2013, 2012 there seemed to be a lot more in this neighborhood, in 2013 less, so maybe I put fewer catalogs or marketing emphasis in this specific neighborhood. We do a lot of very neighborhood specific marketing. Our catalog, we print, I think this year 75,000 copies. 50,000 are distributed through 2 different newspaper options for us, and the other 25,000 are distributed by us at coffee shops and gyms and restaurants, etc., throughout the city. So this helps us figure that out. I actually have a spreadsheet somewhere else of all those locations. I can map that and then compare those locations to where our audience actually is. So I find this really helpful. I'm going to show you last year's map for the festival itself. I have layers broken down by different venues. Here I can see here's 3 of our venues that are close to one another. These 2 are a few blocks away. This one's about a mile away. And I can see, looking at this is the East Street Cinema data. This is where the people who go to this theater live. If I look at the U.S. Navy Memorial data, which is the orange points, I can see where they live. Some of them live literally in the neighborhood or on top of that theater, because it's more residential than this. I know it's only 2 blocks away, but it's a big difference in residential. I can try and see, here's one of our venues out in the suburbs. And when I click on it, there's no one, or very few people, one person in this neighborhood that went out there. I can look to see who attended our parties and see where they're coming from, and comparing to, again, our location data for where the actual venues are. So this helps me to sort of plan, again, where my audience is coming from. I can sort of see where the pull is from. So I'm going to zoom out for a little bit and move over here to Northern Virginia. We have a venue that we've been using there for 2 years, kind of testing it out, an Angelica Mosaic Theater. And if I look at the Angelica Mosaic audience, I can see it's around there. It's not around my downtown neighborhood. So I can see where it's pulling from. Every time I doubt whether or not this theater is pulling, I can see it's pulling neighborhoods way much farther out than my main audience, which is the red. So moving out to the suburbs was a good idea for us. It did bring quite an audience, and it did extend our reach quite a bit. Last year, we also tested a venue north of us in a suburb in Rockville, which is about 15 miles away. It didn't pull nearly as well. Its audience was much more spread out. I'm going to turn this off. So the audience around VisArts was mostly Maryland. No one from Virginia came over. Same with the Virginians. It was all Virginians. No one from Maryland came over. It's a very north-south thing here in Washington. It's very odd, but you can bet on that. So this helps us figure out where audience is going. So if Viz Arts, I wouldn't dare market it in Northern Virginia. I would market it in Maryland, mostly around this neighborhood, this Gaithersburg area, which is a slightly younger area, and it looks like Silver Spring. So I'm able to see, again, visually see my audience and what's going on with it. I find this really helpful, and I find this really helpful for our funders. When we go out for grants, and if we go out for a grant for Northern Virginia, which is a different municipality than Maryland or DC, I can show them where my audience is and how that audience is going to that theater, and they're not crossing over the river much to my area, to DC, so that I can get specific funding for Virginia that I might not be able to get any other way. So again, using your data to help you figure out, to figure out where your audience is coming from, and you can use that for funding. I'm going to actually make one for you in a little bit, so you have an idea, because I know you're probably going, I want to make one. But I want to show this one real quick. This is another event of ours called Pasties. This is a combination of sexy films and live burlesque acts. And so this is only a one-night event. So my audience is all over the place, but mostly it looks like it's in the downtown DC area or throughout DC. I can see some interesting patterns here. There seems to be like a string of people over here. There's a string of people over here. There's a string of people over here. Using this mapping software, I can actually draw lines. So I'm going to draw a line. And I know that our subway lines literally go, this is called our red line. Oops. So I can see how, knowing what our subway looks like, that people are coming who live on the subway line. Same here. This is another one of our lines that goes way out to here, and it goes up by this highway, and then it goes up into Georgetown, and then it goes through downtown, and then it goes out Capitol Hill, and then it goes out to the suburbs again. Blue line. And I can see, based on this, that we should be doing a lot more marketing along the subway lines, is that's actually bringing people in. That's where they live. They're coming to us because maybe our venues are metro accessible. Therefore, that's because, well, our venues are not very parking accessible since they're downtown Washington. So people are definitely coming from the subway. They live on the subway lines. That's important to us. Maybe then next year we can take this information and go to Metro and work with them on a bigger partnership for the festival, and say, hey, listen, of our audience, a majority of them live on the subway lines themselves. It makes a lot of sense to do more partner marketing with you. So here's where these maps really come in helpful, using other information. A site I really like is ESRI, which is all about this idea of demographic segments. They call them top Tapestry segments. I can put in a zip code. So the zip code around my first theater, 2001. I can read information that 37% of them are called trendsetters. Trendsetters are high density apartments. They're usually single. This little idea, where they go, they eat it. They shop at Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. They're big on fashion, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's young yuppies that live in the town, in the city, that are mostly singles. That's where my theaters are. That's how I should be doing my marketing if I want them specifically to attend. There's a lot of renters, a lot of laptops, and lattes. If I would put out a zip code maybe for an area 285, where my suburban Maryland theater is, I can see that their demographic, or the descriptions of their demographics, are completely different. Professionals, married couples, living in single-family homes and not apartments. Urban chic, people who live here, they live on both coasts, etc. It's a very wealthy neighborhood where that theater is. That also helps me figure out how I want to market toward to these people. And this is information I get, the zip codes, from the ticketing software. When I see where people live, there's zip codes, I can sort the spreadsheet by that column. I can say, okay, the majority, my 5 big zip codes are these, and this is the populations that live in these neighborhoods. So this is esri.com. It's called Tapestry Segments. You can just Google it also. But I find this information really helpful, and it gives you a nice narrative of who these people are, which sort of helps you when you're writing grants to describe who your audience is. You don't have to say, well, they're men and women in their 40s to 60s that own houses. This is a lot more interesting to kind of take that up. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is interesting, which I didn't realize. In this neighborhood, it says in the descriptive that more than 20% of that population is Asian, which I would tend to believe, which maybe means maybe for this theater, I start programming more Asian material. So again, using the information you get about a neighborhood for your programming might actually increase your audiences in the long term. Okay. So I want to show you, I'm going to build you guys a map from scratch because I know you're chomping at the bit to see how to build a map. So again, I use Google Maps for this. Google Maps, maps.google.com. If you have a Google account, you need to log into your Google account. And when you click in the search box, at the very bottom, it will say My Maps. You just go to My Maps, and you can create a map from scratch. You have to be logged into Google in order to do this. If you don't have a Google account, create a Gmail account just for this. It's worth having just so you can use the map function. So I'm going to create a map. And I have 3 or 4 data points I'm going to use for this. So I'm going to call this one Chipotle. And the reason I am is I'm going to show you how I can use some audience data I have broken down based on sex or gender with the locations of the Chipotles in my area to try and see, so I can go back to Chipotle and go, hey, listen, this is where your restaurants are, and this is where my audience lives. This is why you should be a sponsor for this year. So everything is done in, quote, layers. And so here I have my first layer, and I hit import. And I'm going to import, I'm going to import my first file, which I have called men, and I'm going to show you what this looks like. This came from my audience survey data, or this women, came from my audience survey data when people typed in that they're female, their age range, and their zip code. So these are the 3 data points I have. There looks like there's 117 responses for this. So all I have to do is drag it in, wait for it to process. And which columns is our place mark? So which is the address, and so that would be zip code. And then what do I want to label that data point? So when I click on a data point, it will have some sort of label. I'm just going to put down women and put down finish. And it's loading, it's mapping. Okay, one of my data points was bad, but that's fine. I'm going to change it because it's women. I know this is sexist. I'm going to change it to kind of a pinky color so it's easier for me to see. Okay, great. And I'm going to zoom in to DC. Now, of course, there are people, as you saw, there are people who live outside of DC area. This is, again, billing address information. Some people might be living in DC, but their billing address is, somewhere else, California, etc. I'm going to add another layer. And this one I'm going to do males. Oops. Import men or males. And this is the same data points I had before. It was just a males, the age range, and a zip code. So zip is what I'm mapping. I'm going to call them men. Finish. And maps. So I'm going to change them to blue because, again, I'm sexist. Okay. And this is only a few data points. This is not that many. But I can see sort of where women are attending from and men are attending from. So already I can see that more women are coming from this part of the downtown cluster, and men are coming from farther out or from Virginia, which I find is interesting. I change this actually to pink. There we go. Okay. So I can click on any one of these data points, and I can say that this person here was age 18 to 29 and lives in this zip code. In this zip code, the average age was 50 to 59. This zip code 18 to 29. Again, this is information that I had put in from that spreadsheet before, which I got from my ticketing software that I had exported. So interesting, most of the men who came to this event, mostly farther out of the city. Most of the women who came to this event looks like they're coming from actually downtown core. Okay. And granted, this is just zip code data, so it's very general as opposed to the other data I had in some of those other maps that had actual addresses. And I'm going to show you some of that to be much more specific. So I want this to be for Chipotle. I wanted Chipotle as a client or a sponsor for this year. So I go to the Chipotle website. I type in Washington, D.C. to find all the Chipotles in my area. Up comes this big list. And now I systematically copy and paste these addresses. I know this sounds like a pain in the ass into a document. So here's all the Chipotles in the DC, the immediate DC area, which I then put into a spreadsheet into Excel because that's what I need to bring into the mapping software. So one column I just have Chipotle, the other column I have this address. And then back on my map Chipotle, I'm going to add another layer. I'm going to import the data. I'm going to import the Chipotle restaurants. And this has exact address data. So we'll actually put it the points where they are. So the address is the address. And I'm going to label them Chipotle finish. Okay, and I'm actually going to change here. You can be kind of pretty. I'm going to change the icon to cup of coffee so I can differentiate them faster. And I'm going to zoom back in. I'm doing this kind of quickly, so I'll take some time. Here we go. So here I can see where all the Chipotles are. There's one literally across the street from another one. Chipotle is amazing to me. And I can see where my audience, quote, lives. Now, granted, if this was the exact address information I had, it would be much more interesting than just the zip code information. But this is something I can then turn to Chipotle and I can say, hey, here's my audience. Here's how men and women break down, if I wanted to break it down that way. And this is where they live compared to where your restaurants are. This might, if I see that there are big clusters around specific restaurants, I can use that information to maybe do partnerships with specific restaurants. An example, the past 2 years, we've been working with Potbelly, which is a chain of sandwich shops in Washington. It's all over the country, but we have a bunch in Washington. We've used this information to identify 6 restaurants where our audience lives or works. We've done a promotion with them where for the month before the festival, we have an ad or some sort of offer on every receipt from those 6 stores. Okay, so I'm not getting the entire chain involved. I'm getting only a few restaurants involved. So I only have to deal with the regional manager. I don't have to deal with management and not the entire national management. It makes it a lot easier to work with. But this is how you can use your data to sort of figure out where your sponsors are and how you can best use them. I'm going to sneeze real fast. So hold on. Okay. So much for that. Sorry. We have a restaurant partnership program we do, and we partner with restaurants to feed filmmakers. So most of the restaurants are obviously near our movie theaters in the downtown core. However, we purposely try to find restaurants that have multiple locations, some of them that are where our audience lives. So it's a better draw. So we can say, hey, listen, you're going to be feeding filmmakers for free at this one restaurant, but you can offer our audience maybe 15% off their meals at your 3 other locations that are where our audience actually lives and where they might actually go to. So again, using this information to sort of finalize and come up with better ideas for sponsorships. So I hope that makes sense. I hope I didn't do that too quickly. These maps can be shared. You can change the maps. You can make them so they're more monochromatic, so they're easier to see the data points. You can change the data you want. So it tells you when there's a mistake. If I look here at the data, I can see that for some reason these zip codes aren't working. For some reason, maybe they're non-existent zip codes. So I'm going to put in just some numbers to make up. I can delete this information if I want to, or I can fix it. I can see where what the data is. I can export these. I can print these. I can print these maps. Oops. In lovely PDF images that make my presentations much easier. Cancel. So this is great for a presentation. People can see where everyone is. I really find this information really helpful, and visually it's interesting for sponsors and donors. It really does make it alive. It's not just a bunch of numbers on a piece of paper and a bunch of hunches you have. It's qualitative data that makes some sense. Again, we use this for funding when we go after grants, and because we have to deal with 3 different municipalities, DC, Maryland, and Virginia. This really helps us to show that, hey, listen, audiences that go to Maryland theaters live in Maryland, audiences that go to Virginia theaters live in Virginia, and that helps us to sort of make our case to get funding from other neighborhoods or from other municipalities. Okay. Does this take a lot of time? No, not really. It's a matter of becoming used to it. The map function is really easy to play with. And once you get it, you get it. It's really all about how the spreadsheets are set up. They usually require you to have some sort of, best one. They usually require you to have some sort of headers, so you can define things. The more data points, the better. Just having zip code information usually isn't enough, which is why the Chipotle spreadsheet was interesting, because it had actual address information. It was able to put those points exactly where those restaurants were. So, and we get that from our ticketing software when people buy by credit card, which if they're buying online, they have to buy by credit card. We get that address information. This is also why we don't use things like Groupon or Living Social. A, we don't like to discount, but B, we don't get enough data from them. Usually when you do Living Social or from our experience, you get a list of names. You don't get email addresses. You don't get anything else. And unless you can find a way to force those people into using your ticketing software to actually complete their purchase so that you can grab their address data, it doesn't benefit me. Especially for all the discounting we would be doing. We used to do Living Social, and you have to offer 50%, and then you got 50% of that, so you got like 25% of your actual, your original ticket price. It wasn't enough, especially since I was losing that data. To me, that data was worth much more. A few years ago, we had a problem with a venue who did their own ticketing, and we were promised the ticket data. And at the end of the event, they said, oh, no, we can't give you the ticketing data due to a licensing issue. And I said, listen, I'd rather not receive my revenue from this event and get the ticket data than to just get the check for, the ticket sales. Because the truth is, for the $10,000 in ticket sales, the money would have been nice, but that data to me was worth more than $10,000, because if I can market to those audiences that showed up for future events, that would be worth close to $80,000, $100,000 over the course of 3 or 4 years. So data really important and can make you a lot of money. Okay.
Hey, John.
Yeah, I want to open up for lots of questions.
Yeah, a couple of questions that are relevant to this section. So I was wondering if when you make a personalized map in Google, if they're set by default to public or private.
No, they're not. They're not public. They're private. You can embed them on your site, but they are not public. They're yours. You can share them. Get to the corner. I can share, but until then, it's not available.
Okay. And then Kyle asks, how many zip codes does DC have? He says, it seems like In a smaller city, there would only be a few data points, or just
Right.
Google's right.
But
Go ahead.
that's when you really need to get actual address data. So street number, street name, that type of thing, and that would give you more information. That's how to do like my audience data. This is bring this one back up again. And you can max these out. This map is almost maxed out. But these are actual physical addresses. So this person lives at 2810 Lee Oaks Place, number 301 in Virginia. So if you're in a smaller community, you don't have as many zip codes, then try and get the exact data, which you can do if your ticketing software is taking credit cards. That information has to be put in when they're buying their ticket. You might, even if you're in a small community, people might be more willing to give up that information in the survey also. So say, listen, we're asking, although the survey is anonymous, we're asking for your home address. We won't mail anything to you, etc. We just want to use this for data purposes on our own. People might be willing to give you that data in a post-event survey. Okay. DC has lots. I think we have like 20 some zip codes in the city itself, which don't necessarily tell me that much, which is why I much prefer these maps that have the actual zip address information, because that really tells me a lot more information than just zip codes. Like I would say in this map alone, this, and I'm going to draw it here. Okay. So this area in red now is probably one zip code. So if I would just map by zip code, it would just put one dot here. By having the actual address data, I can see everyone who's in that zip code. Okay, which again really helps me figure out all kinds of stuff. If I put I can't put the Chipotle one in here because I maxed this one out. But if I put the Chipotle stuff in here, I can see exactly where my audience lives versus all the Chipotle restaurants, which is really rather helpful. There are other big landmarks on here. I can see where the subway stations are because that's part of Google Maps anyway. And I can see where people live in relationship to the metro station. My base map here. This is a generic one. I can put the more detailed one, and then it starts to have things like stores, etc., which is all part of Google Maps to begin with. So I can see where, so DC, USA, that's where the Target is. I can see where all the people who live near the Target, my audience that lives near the Target. So do I want to do a live demo at that Target or not? That helps me a lot. We used to do a lot of live demonstrations right over here is the, oh, yes, right here. The hand is now is where the Whole Foods is. We used to do live demos at the Whole Foods a few years ago, but our audience moved away or stopped going to that Whole Foods, and so now you see there's no one really that close to that Whole Foods anymore. So we lost them as a sponsor because of it, but we had concrete reason as to why. Meanwhile, they opened a Trader Joe's over here. We have a lot more of our audience living near the new Trader Joe's, so we're going after them this year. So again, using that information to sort of figure out new and old sponsors. Next question.
Well, CL's asking if you only have zip codes but multiple points per zip code, will the map at least tell you how many data points are in that zip code, or will it only show the 1 point?
I don't know. I think so. I don't. I can go back and check. I don't know. Cancel. Blah, 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 blah. I don't think so. But what you could do, is that try this real fast. Let me sort this. So 2003, we had a bunch. So let me check this out real fast. 203 is down here in South 4. Yes. I moved one of them just now. So it looks like the area around that is a little. Well, I can see if I'm looking here at the data points. Sorry for me. After you bring it in, I can see here that so 2000. 2001 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I click on them, it puts them all in the same place. But at least I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it keeps on changing who it is: the person in their 30s, person in their 60s, person in their 40s. So the data is there. Just you don't see 6 different blotches there, but it is all there. Does that help? I hope so. Okay.
Yeah, I mean the limitations of Google Maps are what they are, I guess.
Yeah,
there might be a way to show give how many, put a number there instead of a pin, but
right.
Yeah.
The best thing is, depending on how you use it, it's free, or I think we pay $5 a month to use it. Because I think we went with a more extensive map engine, and they charge us $5 a month or something like that. It's worth every penny of $5 a month. This year when we start going through our new sponsor agenda and come up with some of the new sponsors we want to go after, especially local sponsors, we'll be using this a lot to make those presentations. So I think this year we're going after AT&T. We want to show where the AT&T stores, physical stores, are located versus our audience, because we want to do some sort of in-store promotion, and that will help us do it. Same when we go back to our liquor sponsors this year, we're going after a new beer, and we want to show which liquor stores we want to do in-store promotions at, and we can show them where our audience lives compared to those liquor stores, so they know where people are coming from. Next question.
I haven't seen any new questions. Do we have more to go through here, or?
I'm pretty much done. I'm sure people have more questions. You want to just turn on people's mics and see if they want to ask?
Yeah, if you do have a question, you can click the little flag, raise flag, and that way we can unmute you if you want to do it that way. Kyle asks, at what point does Google Maps max out? Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, so that one I had of our audience from 2013 with all those layers of all the theaters, it maxed out. Like I couldn't bring the Chipotle one into that one. So I think it might be 10 layers. And as far as data,
it's a function of layers as opposed to data points, or?
Oh, so you could do 10 layers, and each layer, I believe, you could do 2,000 data points. You're limited to 2,000.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because we hit that all the time.
Okay, then. Looking for some raised flags here, folks. Come on, there must be some more questions.
I know some of you are going, oh my God, he has way too much time on his hands.
So let me ask, since I'm fascinated by this, I could probably ask questions all afternoon. What level of granularity are you doing this at? Like, are you doing individual shows? Are you doing this by aggregate? How deep are you getting into this data?
We're doing this by event, although we can do specific shows. So we can do. Well, that's what we have We have the data broken down by theater. So we have an idea of which theaters are performing and which ones aren't performing, and where they're drawing from to see if there's any overlap. We actually got rid of a theater this year because there was too much overlap from its audience to our other audiences, so we didn't feel that there was a need to have that theater again. That and our survey data was the audience. Our audience didn't like that theater to begin with, so between those two, we felt if we nixed the theater, we would be okay, and we ended up being fine. So again, that data helped us figure that or kind of solidify that information as opposed to just the hunch going, yeah, I guess we're going to be okay. We had some concrete evidence behind it to know that we were. The other thing we use this data for, which I haven't gone over, I can show real quick if I can remember my login. We use an online program called Donor Tools that lets us export all of our information and ticketing information and manage our donors. So I can see how many. I can bring up people. I can look for Smith. And I can see Richard Smith. I can.
So in this case, the people who bought tickets are considered donors.
Yes, we're using it as basically an audience management thing. As we bring data in, we can tag it. So I can see that this person bought 3 tickets to Pacey's 14. He went to Pacey's 13. This person, Alan Smith, has come to stuff in 2012, 2011, 2013. I can sort of see where people are coming from. So if he hasn't come to anything in 2014, I can send an email as to why. I can see how much they've spent over the years, other contact information, when they made those quote donations, etc. There's lots of donor management software out there. I like this one because it's cloud-based. We got into this when it was only $30 a month, so I think that's our legacy price. I think now it's up to $40 a month. It's not that expensive in the scheme of things. If you use it, we don't use it nearly as much as we should, but it is a nice way of organizing our data to figure out again who's buying what when they're coming, and looking at trends that way. So. Yeah, I haven't put the stuff in from this year. This guy, Derek Smith, came with a lot of stuff in 11 and 12. He hasn't been anything in the past 2 years, or last year. We didn't put 2014 in yet. I can send him an email to find out why. I can find out if he moved away. There's lots of information I can find out from that. And this software is smart enough it allows you to sync to Facebook based on email addresses. So it pulls someone's Facebook profile up also. We can use this to contact people. I can use this to send emails. I can use this to send donation pages, our annual appeal. I can link it directly back in, and this even has the ability to make a donation through their system, so that donation will automatically go back into their account or their data. So it's a nice package. Again, I'm too busy to use this to the point it should be used. But it's nice to know that twice a year we can export our data and sort of have it managed in one place.
This looks great. Can you talk a little bit about how people get tagged as having been to one thing or another? Is that like by import that you do?
Yeah,
how does that work?
Yeah, so when we import the dashboard, import data. So when we import data, we can create a tag for them as we import it. So that's how we do it.
And that's part of the import process. It says, do you want to tag this import? Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
All right.
And you can import people directly in from MailChimp and other stuff. It has some really good in PayPal. It has some really good integrations. You just don't use that as much.
John, can you mute the ringer on your phone there? It's right by the mic, and every time an email comes in, it blasts in our ears a little bit.
Oh.
It's no problem. CL asks, since you can't use all the data you gather, do you have a specific way to shuffle the data to get a good random sample, or do you just randomly pick a point to start pulling data from and import as many points as possible?
We kind of randomly, but it really depends on what we're using it for. The general audience one, it's very random which ones we use. But when we use it for sponsors and we're looking for a specific neighborhood, we'll make sure it's the data points within that neighborhood. So let's say we're looking for a restaurant that's got 3 locations. We will pick the zip codes surrounding those 3 locations and only import that stuff in for that specific map. Because it's not important to us that someone who lives 50 miles away would be going there, or even 20 miles away. Usually restaurants have a pull of a few miles, and that's about it, especially neighborhoody restaurants.
Do you have any good stories about using donor tools to, sort of lure somebody back in?
Yeah. Well, so I wasn't the one in charge of this, but someone else on our board was. They were able to use it last year to sort of identify people who we are calling superstars. They're people who constantly buy all access passes or make annual donations, etc., over certain limits or a certain amount. And then we can go back to them and offer them. We started this new program called the Superstars. Um, there for an annual donation of a certain amount. It includes their all access pass to the festival, plus their donation, plus a bunch of other benefits they get guaranteed or reserved seating at other events they might want to attend, etc. I have someone else who's managing that whole program. But by using the stuff in donor tools, they're able to see who is more likely to make that donation based on what they've spent in the past to target them for the future. So and that's why you would use a customer management system like this.
Yeah, this one looks really great. I mean, I've looked at other ones in the past, and I like the tag aspect to it. The others seemed really difficult to massage the data into telling me what a person had bought in the past.
Right.
So this really seems um, very appropriate to the film festival model, where your donations, quote unquote, are actually ticket purchases, and they may not think of themselves as donors, but they really are. It's interesting.
Right, and then I can click on any tag here. So I just clicked on Pasties 14. I can see everyone who bought tickets for Pasties 14 and then what else they bought over the years too. This also has smart tags. I'm able to do a search based on multiple tags. So people who maybe went to Pasties but nothing else, or someone who maybe went to a Best of DC Short Show but didn't go to the actual festival itself. I'm able to figure that out. And so these are all the tags we have in the system right now. So I can look at these smart tags, people who came to DC Shorts 2010. Oh, I guess not. Maybe these aren't working. Okay, so someone who came to DC Shorts 2010, our script competition in 2010, and our best of in 2011. So these four people are sort of like the diehards from 2010, 2011. So these are people we would target for other things to attend. Does that make sense? So you can use this data to sort of figure out which people you're going to go after for bigger donations, etc. So I haven't updated this in a while, and that's because I've been busy, and the person who was supposed to do it didn't, and hence why he no longer works for us.
Okay, I'm not seeing a lot of flags, and we are at just over an hour. So I'm gonna give people just a few more seconds to type in a question or hit the flag button before we say good afternoon. This has been really interesting, John. Do you have a pet project on what's next? What you'd like to be looking towards the future for in terms of new data projects?
Well, yesterday I had a long call with ticketleap about ways to change the way I'm collecting data through them. I really like their software. They keep on making upgrades, which is actually more of a downgrade for me. So I'm trying to convince them to add some features back in, as well as the ability to have me survey people who are buying online differently from those who are buying at the box office. So I don't have to have that blank box that just says for office use only. But I can ask more specific questions of my box office staff. You know, that other people won't see. So I'm hoping to get that done. Um, but no, I mean, again, now that I'm back from my vacation, it's time to start working on sponsors for next year, etc. Now that I have the data from last year, I just need to clean it up a bit. But now I can start mapping and figuring who I want for new partners this year, especially new local partners. We this year we had an online film festival. We sold about 8,000 tickets to that around the country. So that data is going to help me figure out finding some more national sponsors that might want to sponsor the online festival, because that pull is obviously greater than just a DC pull. So I'm working on that.
What do your sponsors typically say when you start showing them maps of things?
They're like, "Wow, someone did their homework."
Yeah, and that's
They're
not
kind
the
of blown
case.
away by it because they're not used to it. They're used to just getting a sponsorship deck and someone's, please help me with money. And I'm like, hey, listen, we want you to help us with money or product, but we're showing you where the audience is. This is justification for it. So
And is the value for them generally around, like, I mean, you showed us a lot about physical stores. Are those the people who are mostly interested in that data, or are
that's why
there other
that's why
uses?
I find the data most useful, especially for local. For national sponsors, like beer companies and cell phone, all that stuff. It's harder, but at least we can show where they are, and we can say, hey, listen, our audience is in a more economically upper income area than not, and this is why we'd be a good fit. So we can show that sort of trending data. We can also show kind of how that map I showed, showing how our audience has changed or where they've moved over the years. That helps us too, because in transitional neighborhoods, at least in this area, that's where we have the new trendier bars. And so when we're going after liquor sponsors, we can say, hey, listen, we were with this guy back in 2011, and this was the area they were in. We want to be with you in the next area. We know these are the bars we can do promotions that would make the most sense for you, based on the new trendy neighborhood, etc. And they're very appreciative of that we kind of know that before they do.
Okay, very cool.
Cool.
Thanks so much, John. Do you have any projects in particular you want to plug before we say good afternoon?
No. If you're going to Art House Convergence, please, I'd love to see everyone there. It's gonna be a lot of fun. It's a great conference. If you have any questions or anything you want to contact me directly, just send me an email, Jon at dcshorts.com. I'm happy to answer it. Or go to our website and get the phone number and just call me, or Google me and call me. It's fine. But I'm happy to talk to you about whatever you have questions about.
Terrific. Kristen, you got any last words here?
Sorry, I'm muting myself. Yeah, no, that was great. It was pretty riveting, John. Good job. And thank you guys all for coming. And we hope to see you. We'll let you know about the next webinar in December very soon, and then we'll also soon unveil details about Art House Convergence in January. So if you guys have any questions, definitely chime in on the Facebook page or on Twitter. And visit the website and sign up for our newsletter. Make sure you sign up for the IFP Festival Forum newsletter. So thanks, everybody.
And that's at ifpfestivalforum.com.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Chris, for organizing.
No worries. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye, everyone.